Hi, my name is Kasim Betania. I'm senior software engineer. I do full stack software development. I am here today to show you how you can implement Entity Framework in your application. Entity Framework is an object relational mapper framework. It does add a data access layer to your application very quick and automatically, so you don't need to spend any time writing the standard ADO.NET code to access your database. Entity Framework gives you great advantages in your application. It generates the code automatically for you. It does increase developers' productivity by cutting the development time and cost, and it's very efficient and reliable. So what are entity framework approaches? We have three approaches. So we have the data first approach, where we start with an existing database, and entity framework do the magic for us and create entity classes and do all the data access layer. So this is based on your situation. If you do have the database first, you can create your application and still use entity framework. Also, there is another approach which is the model first. I don't really want to talk about this because I don't think this approach is very useful for us as developers. Approach 3 is code first approach. So code first approach is basically when we start with entity classes and generate the database for us. And this is the one we're going to do the tutorial on today. We have 4 steps to implement entity framework code first. First thing we need to do, create our classes, the domain classes. In this case, we are going to create a shopping application. So we would like to create the very basic is just an item class and category class. Item represents a product, so our shopping store sells multiple items or products, and also we organize these items into categories. So we will need to have entity classes, two of them, one for entity or items, one for products or items, or one for category, and we will have a relationship between them. So each category will have many items in it, and each item will have one category, so it's one to many relationship. So let's get started. Flip to Visual Studio and create a new project, and ASP. Okay, we select ASP.NET Web Application, the C#, create it, and we call it Shopping Store, and create that. We select MVC, no authentication, create. Visual Studio now it's creating the application for us. By the way, this application after this tutorial can be expanded to be a huge application or a big project. So in this project I'm going just to show you how to do this code first approach in Entity Framework. So let's see. Okay, application created. First thing we're going to do is step number 1, create our domain classes. So let's go to the model folder and add a class and call that class item. Okay, to speed up, I already typed those entities, so here is the item class. We see that we have ID. By the way, this field here, the integer ID, Entity Framework generates it in the database as a primary key. So it's an ID or item ID the same. It will be an primary key in the table, and we have the name of this item, the price, description, and also we will have to know which category this item belongs to. So let's create the category class. Create class. Okay, and the category class also the same. The ID property always going to be a primary key, so we can have it as category ID or ID itself alone, that's fine, it's the same. Here we see this is the navigation property that creates the relationship between both classes. So the database entity framework understands the relationship between them. So one category will have a collection of items. So one category will have 300, 500, whatever numbers of products or items in that section or in that category. But each item will have one category. So it's one-to-many relationship. Now we're going to create number 2, we are going to create the data context class. So our data context class would be actually, before we create the data context, we need to install entity framework. So we'll go to NuGet package manager and we go to browse. Make sure you're connected to the internet so you can see that entity actually framework, yeah, this one, select it and we install it, accept. So now we see that entity framework references have been added to our references list. Entity framework and entity framework SQL server, they're just been added to our references. So now we have entity framework installed. Let's go and create our context class. So the context class, we're going to create it in a data access layer or folder. So let's create a new folder and call it data access, and in that folder we're going to create our context class. So we call it shopping context. This is the name of our context class. Our context class, this class is very important because this class, shopping context class, we make it in here from the another class called database context, which is the base class that coordinates our entity framework functionalities for our entities. So this is a very important class. So let's write db context and resolve that by adding the namespace entity data. You see that system data entity has been added. Now after we create this class, we're going to create the constructor. So it will be like shopping context. It's very important here to make sure your database connection string is set properly. So the connection string here where we indicate the connection string. So the connection string in the web config file, we're going to call this connection string as shopping. Very simple. So this is the name of our connection string. So we know which database we are going to connect to. Now we go to web configuration file and we make an entry for our connection string. I already have that already in here. Here is the connection string section. So copy under configuration. Actually not here, so it should be directly under configuration. So it's right here. Now we name it shopping. We said here we specify shopping, so we call it shopping here. Provider name SQL client. Here is the connection string. Here is the important part. So the data source is the server name. So I do have SQL Server Management Studio installed on my machine. So I'm going to create a new database on this server. So I need to indicate the server name. Once you open it, you find, first thing you find is the server name. So this name is in here, is exactly the same name indicated in here. And then here's the initial catalog is the name of the new database. So we will call it shopping DB database, and security integrated security true. So now we set the connection string. So now here is done. After that, we create the properties that return objects of our entities. Since we have two entities, so we create two properties. First one we call it set item, and we call it items. Getter and setter. Let's resolve that by adding the model. Copy, and we do the same for queries. Okay, so now we created both properties. Okay, let's build the solution. Okay, succeed. Now we create the initializer class. So step number 3 here is creating the initializer class. We did create the entity classes, we did create the data context class, and we set the connection string. Now we just need to create the initializer class, and we should be good to go. So we call this class shopping initializer class. Okay, so here's the initializer class, which is basically going to initialize our database with the test data using its seeds method. So let's make it inherit from drop create database if model changes, and let's pass the name of our context class, which is shopping context. Place it in here, and let's resolve that. We resolve that by adding a reference to the entity data entity namespace. After we create that, we are going to have the seed method. Actually, I already typed this class, so right here. So we're going to add the seed method. So here is the seed method. Okay, it's the seed method. Before looking into the seed method, I'll say that again, that drop create database of model change. This settings here, it's going to drop and create the database again whenever the model changes. This is very important for test environment. So now I expect you're doing your test and your development phase, so you're not on production. So we're using this drop create database if model changes, but you need to be very careful whenever you go to production environment, because we will not it's not going to be okay to drop and recreate the database. So we are in another video, in a separate video, I will show you how to change the database schema instead of dropping and recreating the database. So make sure this is not going to production, this stays on test. Okay, here is the seeds method. Seeds method is very important method. It's going to initialize our database with this test data. So here we pass the name of our context class, which is shopping context is the name of the class. First let's resolve this and add a reference to the model. Okay, so first thing we do, we are initializing the category in this application with the 3 entries, 3 records: furniture category, electronics category, and the food and the pharmacy category. And we add it we add it. After that, we save the changes to the context. The order is very important. You need to do the category first, then you need to do the list, the item second after that, because the item will have the category ID in here. So if we don't have the category in the context already, it will result in an error. Okay, now we are looking here, we are doing the item. So we added 3 items for the category number 1, which is the furniture, and we added 3 items for the second category, electronics, and finally we added two items for the third category, which is pharmacy. After that, we save that into the context in here. So again, the order is very important. Now after we completed the seed method, I think we're good. We just need to do small entry in web configuration to basically tell entity framework to use this entity class, the shopping context with this initializer. So let's go to the entity framework section here, and I already typed that. Here you go. Text. So now in entity framework we made the entries in here. Here is the context class and here is the initializer. We added them under entity framework. We save it. So now I'm gonna recap very quick. We created our domain classes under model, the category class and the item class, and we created the context class and indicated the name of the connection string, which is defined in our web configuration right here. Exact name, here is our connection string, and also we added the initializer class and we indicated the initializer and the context together under entity framework. So we made also this entry in here. Now we are ready to use our entity classes in our solution. Before that, I'm going to build and run the solution to see the default template that we're going to change to use. So here we have the default template. This is the home controller, about, this is the about, and this is the contact page. So we are going to, let's flip here and let's add a new controller. Before that, I'm going to make changes to the layout. So we go to shared layout in here and we change the name of the application and we call it store front, and this controller is storefront controller right here, and this is the name of the controller I'm going to add, and home is going to go to the storefront controller, and about we're going to change that to be I'm not gonna change that, leave that as is. So let's just do that change and run, build it, close it. Let's add our models to the solution. Let's create a new controller. This is a very important step. Now we are going to add a new controller and all its views using scaffolding framework, and we're not only going to save our time in the CRUD operation that entity framework going to add for us, which is the data access layer. No, we are going also to save our time in writing the controller and creating the views using scaffolding. This is a very amazing, very good framework that's built in Visual Studio. So it's very helpful. It does save a lot of time as well. So let's create a new controller and call that we're going to use entity framework. So MVC5 controller with the views using entity framework. So we added that. The model class we're going to use once we get to our shopping application. We're not gonna see the products and the items randomly. We would like to see first the categories, the sections we have. So we're going to use the category model class and indicate our context class and call it call the controller as storefront. Add it. Scaffolding, making its magic, adding our full controller and adding our views for us. So let's see what happens. Okay, here is the controller, storefront controller. Storefront controller is a controller that has, see, this is our context class. So we create an instance of our entity framework database context class, and we use it in our action methods. In here we have an index, and we have details, and we have create, and also we have create using JavaScript and Ajax call. I will have a separate video posted to show how you can call this method for using your JavaScript entity JavaScript through Ajax call. I'm going to show you how to do that using a jQuery library. Also, we have, see how many action methods we have. We also have edit. So this basically it edit the category for us. Also, we have the edit here with the same thing with the JavaScript work, and we have delete, and we have delete the same way with Ajax call, and we have dispose here. Okay, so we have 127 lines of code created for us on the fly, and we see here the view. We have a storefront folder where we have view for create, for delete, for edit, for details, and for index. So let's run the application and see what we get now. Now we're going to run the application. It's going to kick off the initializer class using our context class, making the connection to the database, creating our database, populate our database with the test data that we have in our seed method in the initializer class. So let's run that and see what we get. So I run the solution. Now we expect SQL Server to have a new database entry. So let's look in SQL Server as well. Here is our solution, storefront home. Let's click on the storefront. Once we click on storefront, we go to the index. We go to the index action method of the controller, where it's going to display all the models all the categories we have in the database. Here you go. We have furniture category, we have electronics, and we have pharmacy. So let's go to the database. Here's my server, connect, and where is the database? The new database, shopping database. This is the same one that we indicated in our context class in here. See the name of the database. This is the name of the connection string, and the connection string there, this connection string has this catalog name, shopping database, which is a shopping database, and it should have two tables. This is the category table. It has three records: furniture, electronics, pharmacy. So this page, the index page, retrieves or selected all the records in the category table and displayed. See how amazing that. Before Entity Framework, if with ADO.NET, standard ADO.NET, if I need to implement this, only this view, I need to write the whole code that will go data reader or data adapter standard class and use it to make the call to the SQL Server database. And also I will need to write SQL query to select that category, and I need to write the view, and I need to debug, and I need to fix errors. So this little functionality will take a lot of time. So what we have also here, we have a create new. Okay, so this basically, this is going to create a new category in our database. So let's try that. Okay, it took us to the create view. So we also have a create view for us. Wow, that's amazing. So let's try that. Let's call a new category and call it home category, or let's say home category. Let's create it. Okay, it's added. So let's see the database. Whoa, it did So our entity framework inserted a new record in here using the create action method in the controller. Okay, so it creates a new record. So not just select, also create. So in create requires an insert statement in SQL Server, which is already taken care of by entity framework, and also the entire code, data access code, is already created in entity framework, debugged, efficient, reliable. So that means so far we can save a lot of time creating our plumbing C# code to access the database, and also retrieving the information from the database using SQL Server and all that. Also we can delete, so let's try to delete. We deleted home. Are you sure you want to delete? Yes, delete. So it's gone. So let's look in the database. Where is the home, the new record? Let's see where it is. It's gone. Wow, that's amazing. So this is amazing job. Also, let's see the details. So let's go to the furniture, go to the details. Oh, it showed this category, information about this category. So I'm going to make one change in here. I'm going to make the details view to show us a list of related items for this category. So for the furniture, we're going to show its related items. So let's make the following change in here. So I'm going to go to the details action method in here. We see in this method what we're doing, we are retrieving the category here from the context class, and we are passing it back to the view. And the view, this is the view, details view. We expect to get the model category, and then we display its information. So let's change that. Let's change that. I'm gonna start with the controller. I'm gonna start with the controller here. We're going. Let's get the items. A list of items, actually. Say list item. So we created a list of items, and then we set the database items where the category ID, because we're going to get only items related to this category. So we are passing the category ID in here. So we grab it and we say where it's equal this ID, and we make everything to list. Okay, now we retrieved a list of items where their ID is the same as category ID. So what we expect to get from the items in here, we expect to get, see, we have all the items that we had in the initializer. So what is going to be retrieved is where category ID equal. So the one we're going to try, furniture, what's the ID of the furniture? ID is 1. So let's say 1, run it. We must get 3 items: sofa, love seat, and dining table. So let's go back to our Visual Studio here. What we're going to do, we're going to pass this to the view instead of the category. And also I also need to know which category is in here. So we're going to send that category in the view bag, and we call it cat, and we're not going to pass the object, we're going just to pass the name, so we know which category is this. Now we're going to change the view. So let's switch and go to the view and change that view. So the view is details. Here is the view. We're going to get rid of this view. Actually, I already typed the view that we're going to use. So here's the tutorials. Okay, this is the new view. you see. Okay, I'm gonna copy it. I'm gonna go over. Here you go. Okay, so we see here we're passing a collection of the item, and then we have the view bag title. We're going to change it to be leave it details, and here we see the view bag. We display the view bag category, so the category name, the one we have in here, view bag category, view bag category. After that we go to the table here, and we created a table, a header for the name and name, price, description, update. And this is the important part in here. So in this part we are going through a list of items one by one, and for each one we display the name and price, description, all the information. So let's run that and see what happened now. We'll go back to the solution, and we go to the storefront, and we go to the furniture. Now we're going to see the details in this furniture. Click details. Oh, we get 3 items: sofa, love seat, dining table. Okay, sofa, love seat, dining table, great. In here, so now we see that we have complete details. The electronics, we got 3 of them here: printer, speakers, laptop. We go back and we pharmacy select. We get 2 drugs in here in the pharmacy category. Wow, that's amazing. Anyway, as a result, what we have implemented today is a lot of work. So we implemented this within 30 minutes tutorials. This should take days of coding before Entity Framework. So this is a complete example of Entity Framework code first approach. This application can be used to be a big application, can be expanded. You can work on the UI, make it much better, and you can make a lot of changes. So thank you very much for watching.